Why would you choose to spend thousands or even tens of thousands on decorative finishes that quite honestly you probably don't care too much about? I'm Alan from Signature Walls, and today I'm here to educate you on the world of decorative finishes and how they can not only add appeal to your short-term rental properties but also enhance the space, making them more desirable and giving you the opportunity to rent out your properties at a higher price point, offering a more premium service to the right buyers. So when it comes to decorative finishes, you can be looking at things from paint finishes. We can look at things using Venetian plasters, textured plasters, micro cements, metallics, and even liquid metal. Yes, you heard me right. That's actual metal filings which are suspended in an epoxy resin to give you a liquid product that you can put over pretty much any surface. And as we like to say, you've got a solution for every surface out there. So whether it's a wall, like we've got behind me, a bathroom, a kitchen worktop, or even a ceiling, you'll find a product that is suitable and can be used to enhance the visual appeal of that area. Now, when you're designing these short-term rental properties and you're looking to appeal to the right buyers and people that will actually cherish staying in your place and making the most of it, we need to think about keeping things either bold, daring and dramatic, or the other end of the spectrum, a little bit more neutral, subdued and understated. So what you've got to remember is who are the people that are actually renting these properties out in the first place. Now, with so many people now having the flexibility, the freedom and the ability to work from either home or wherever they want to work from in the world, either on a hybrid model or on a full-time basis, what you're finding is the rental market is shifting, and these short-term rental properties in particular can be a great hub for somebody to work from. So whether it's a week, a couple of weeks or even a few months at a time, they might have a short-term contract where they just need somewhere to call home, but there's also been set up so they can work from. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how to set up your space, but what we do need to keep in mind with these decorative finishes, like the ones that we've got on the wall behind me, so rather than just simply being a lounge space or a living room, if you've got a lovely feature wall on one of the walls, or perhaps you've done a media unit or a chimney breast using a decorative finish, then it also acts as a backdrop. Now, for the right person, this backdrop can be really essential for them if they're on video calls, if they're recording content, or they wanted to stage some photo shoots, and then they've got products, clothing, whatever it might be. You've got to remember, most people these days are using social media. So if we've got interesting backdrops available and the right person decides to rent your short-term property out, this backdrop not only gets featured in their content, but their friends might make an inquiry and be like, wow, I absolutely love that feature wall. Is that at your house? Or they might have a complete stranger from the other side of the country reach out to them and message them asking where they took that shot. Guess what? That means they're now doing your marketing for you and helping to drive traffic and interest back to your designed property. All because you took that little bit of an insight that you decided to put some of these more quirky or unusual design styles into place. So what I like to think about is the Instagram effect. How impactful visually is your property going to be? Because let's be honest, the short-term rental market, just like any property market, is highly competitive and it's becoming ever more saturated day by day. Now, there's so many people out there that have got no clue when it comes to design, and then there's also the people that just don't care for it. They might appreciate nice design, but when it comes to your short-term rental property, the main driving factor is going to be money. And yes, design work, such as these feature walls that we've got, do add a little bit more of an additional investment into your property. However, I'm confident to say that you'll be able to market it on the upper end of the price point, appeal to people that wouldn't necessarily want to stay in a boring property, and then subsequently give you a much higher booking rate overall. So you'll be able to recoup this additional investment in no time. So when you're looking at these decorative finishes, I'm going to explain a little bit about what we have and where it can be used, so you can start getting your brain working a little bit. So I'm going to use this example behind me. We've got two things going on here. The main feature wall, is obviously this lovely centerpiece that I've got behind me. So it's a blend of two materials. One of them is liquid metal, the other one is concrete. So by blending those two together, we were able to create a really bespoke texture and finish for this particular piece. So we've got some really shiny areas. We've got some areas that are very coarse, very heavily textured. You've got sections where there's more concrete. You've got sections where it's purely just liquid metal. So it creates a really intriguing surface. We've also added in two other main details. Firstly, is the pinstripe going down the side here. And then secondly, is the liquid metal molten dribble that we've got coming down from that top corner. So the amount of things that we can do with these finishes is virtually infinite. So if you've got an overall design theme that you're working to, or you wanted to curate the space to give a particular look, feel and aesthetic, then we can certainly work with either your current design team or whoever's managing the project to give you the most suitable products and recommendations. So when it comes to wall design, that's very much our wheelhouse, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So whether you've seen something online and you really love the idea of how that could look in your rental property, or if you've been mood boarding, or you've seen something out on your travels and you've been really inspired by it, bring it to us and we can help you to reverse engineer and figure out exactly what is going on. We can also use these images and inspirations to pull through into your design, but put it together in your own way. So does that mean using it in a different colour? Maybe it means adding more texture. Maybe it means using that product, not just on the wall, but on the ceiling, or maybe picking up a few accent panels throughout the property to create a more cohesive theme that flows. So when it comes to the wall design aspect, it's really important to consider your lighting as well, because it will have such an impact. Not just for how the finishes look, but how your guests interact with the space and the overall ambience that's created. So it's amazing how different some of these finishes can look when you put cool white on them versus warm white, or pick out some directional spotlights versus using a wall wash either from above or below to create that nice glow across the surface. Alternatively, it's always worth considering backlit sections, or you can do shadow gap lighting. You could pick out a nice set of directional spotlights from up on the ceiling if you wanted to, but the main thing to remember here is that who is using the space and what are they going to be using it for. So if you've got people that take a lot of video calls, or they're shooting content for social media, for YouTube and things like that, they're really going to appreciate having the option to play around with these different lighting setups, because even with the one backdrop, you can light it in different ways. It can create even more subtle and subdued look and feel to the video, or you can have something a bit more bold and dramatic. So when you're thinking like that, you're going to appeal to a wider audience of digital nomads, content creators, and people that just value nice settings. But since we're talking about short-term rentals, we need to start getting the brain thinking a little bit differently. So rather than just creating a centerpiece, why not look at what else is happening in the space that you have available? Now imagine this is your lounge area or your living room. We could obviously create the centerpiece, put a TV here, or use it as the main fireplace wall, but think of the walls either side of it. Think of the alcoves, think of the sections where you'd normally either put a piece of fitted furniture or some joinery, or potentially leave the walls plain. Now we can still create a nice visual impact here, and depending on how big the room is, you can also give the illusion when you're creating content, i.e. for your end user. Now this becomes particularly valuable for somebody that shoots a lot of content or needs to stage photo shoots across a couple of different locations, because straight away you might have 2, 3 or 4 different scenes within the same property, which means one rental cost. So they might decide to stay with you for a week or a couple of weeks and just get everything done that they need to, which can then populate their social feeds for weeks or even months to come. It mixes it up for them so their viewers are not getting the same generic backdrop or green screen setting that they might typically use. So these more subtle and understated finishes are really important, because you can still get a good level of visual impact without being too bold or in your face. And these can be used on walls, you can use them on ceilings, you can use them on furniture. You can use them pretty much anywhere. So if you're looking to create that really cohesive look and feel, start thinking bigger picture. Where else could I pull things in, and how could I dress the space after that? So again, coming to the option for photo shoots and for these end users, if you've got artwork that could be moved around, then you're opening up the options a little bit more. It gives the end user the opportunity to dress the space however they see fit. So you might find that they decide to stage it with a simple table and chairs. You might find that they move that out of the shot and use it just as a plain backdrop, or they might even bring their own artwork to hang in strategic places for the purposes of a photo shoot. So where else should we be thinking about, or how could we be thinking about these decorative finishes and architectural coatings within your short-term rental property? Well, the next thing that jumps to mind for me really is going to be the micro cement bathroom. So it's a really popular product that we have at the moment, and you can literally use it to coat ceilings, walls, down onto the floor, giving you a full wet room system that's completely waterproof. So when we use these products, you're going to achieve a really modern and minimalist aesthetic. So you might have seen these images and inspirations on websites such as Instagram, Pinterest, and wondered, what is that product? How have they achieved it? And how could I get my hands on some of that? So micro cement is a really robust and solid product. As I mentioned, it's also waterproof, but it means that you can have a completely seamless installation with no grout lines, no join lines. And as a landlord looking after these products or properties, you need to remember longevity, maintenance and upkeep. So with your regular tiled bathrooms and grout is obviously porous. So at some point you might decide that needs a bit of maintenance and upkeep so you don't end up with water, places that it shouldn't be. Whereas the micro cement installations that we complete are completely waterproof with each layer, and there is no join lines. So the likelihood of having a water leak at some point is reduced. Not just that, you haven't got mould to contend with on the grout, so you're not scrubbing that for ages. The only serviceable item is going to be the mastic bead where your shower screens and your second fix plumbing and sanitary ware meets the micro cement installation. When we're looking at that as well, the other thing to consider is we'd always seal the installation with a protective coating. So this keeps it looking fresh for as long as it can be, subject to use obviously. But if you find later on down the line it's looking a little bit tired, it's lost its sheen or it's lost its luster a little bit, then you just give us a call, we'll come back in, sand it and reseal it for you. That way you're extending the product lifespan and keeping your installation looking amazing for many years to come. The thing to note about a lot of these decorative finishes, so whether it's micro cement, whether it's Venetian plaster, or whether it's one of our concrete products, is they're all a very tactile experience. So digital images, photography, videos, etc. will only go so far as to convey to your end users exactly what these installations are like. So what you might also find when you've got these finishes in your property is that people are actively booking because they don't know what it is, they want to experience it and they want to touch it. Okay? Might seem a little bit strange, but believe me, once you've seen these things in person and had an opportunity to touch them and see how they actually feel, it completely transforms the experience, not just at that time, but in your mind, because you're then able to connect the dots between how it looks on the screen and how it feels in real life. You might find that people are reaching out to you or seeing your listing and even asking you questions. What is this product? How can I use it? Or they're thinking of using, say, micro cement in a bathroom project at home, and they just want to see a real life example. So not every micro cement installer is going to have a showroom. So where are they going to see it in person? Well, if there's a rental property and they can stay there for a night or a couple of nights, one, it's an opportunity to get away and have something, a little bit different. But two, it means you're also able to then go and try one of these micro cement bathrooms, kitchens, floors, whatever it is that you might have in your property. So then people are actively seeking it out before making a commitment to have it in their own property. It almost acts as a little bit of a showroom. So here's a great idea for you if you haven't already got your brain working like that. If you're thinking of doing this, you could even collaborate with the micro cement installer that you're going to use for the project and ask them if they're open to doing something in terms of the overall rates or the project investment on the basis that it can act as a showroom for them. So you've got to think creatively, folks. When it comes to these products, there is literally an infinite amount of textures, colours and finishes. So I'm confident to say that you'll find one that works very, very well for your property. And if you do decide to get bored or tired of it at a later date, it can always be changed. Okay, it's never a permanent installation. So sometimes that might involve sanding it back and recoating it. Sometimes you might put a colour wash over it or tint it at a later date just to change the overall appearance. When it comes to the overall design styles as well, so say for instance you've got a multi-unit HMO style property, or you've got multiple units within one development, you might even decide to curate each of the spaces in a very different theme but using the same core batch of products. So by that I'm talking about, you might have, property number one or studio number one might be a very, minimal, clean aesthetic, Scandi style. You might decide to go number two, really bold, wacky and creative, really, really dramatic colours. You might have one that's more geared up towards the ladies. You might have one that's more kitted out to appeal to guys. Before you know it, you can easily create 5, 6, maybe even 10 different themed spaces that will give the end user a vastly different experience. So there are a couple of popular designer hotel chains that have done this exact thing. They curated the spaces and each guest will have a very different experience. Now when they're chatting amongst themselves, or if they speak to friends, then of course they're going to relay that experience. But their friends might also then realise, well, maybe I want to stay in that space at a later date, or I know somebody that would love that property or to enjoy an experience there, which could increase the likelihood of getting a referral, which also then means your booking rates going up. And for what? You haven't had to do any extra work. All you've done is design, build and supply them a place to stay. So it's when we think about these thoughtful touches and we think outside of the box, these decorative finishes can really come into their own and enhance your space. So what are some of the common problems that you might come up against when it comes to decorative finishes and the short-term rental market? So like everything in life, folks, you pay for what you get. So if you decide to start cutting corners, going for the cheapest option out there, chances are you're probably going to have a few problems down the line. Now, I'd always recommend seeking out reliable and reputable installers, and also people that are using good quality branded products versus the cheap inferior products that might fail further on down the line. As I'm sure you can appreciate, you want to make sure that your rental property is looking as good as it can be for as long as it can be without any additional work or attention needed on your part. So we need to make sure that also the people staying in the property are aware of these decorative finishes and that we do not treat them in the same way that we would with regular painted surfaces, marble worktops, wooden floors and so forth. They each come with their own care and consideration, and of course your installer should always provide you with an aftercare document. So what could work really well within your short-term rental property, and this is something I've experienced myself over the years, is when you go in and somebody's actually taken the time and effort to create you a book or a pamphlet about the space. So not only can you offload all the generic boring stuff like how to turn the TV on, how to operate the washing machine, but you can also talk about the overall design theme, link to some of the products, or talk in more detail about these different finishes to get people excited and so they can appreciate the work and the thought that's gone into it. Let's be honest, folks, people love a story, and if they can connect with the story behind why you've designed the space how you have, or the overriding theme behind what it is you're trying to do, then that can help you to forge more of a long-term relationship with the people staying in your properties. It also shows that you care and you're going that extra step. All too often, people are going for the magnolia mansions, the whitewash approach, and the boring grey palettes. We're in 2024, folks. We're in the realm of hyper-personalisation. So why not think outside of the box and get creative? You can have stencil work, you can put murals, you can decide to embed some meaningful quotes or poems on your walls if you really wanted to. So say for instance somebody's doing, they're doing a house up Okay, they're in the middle of a massive building and renovation project. They need somewhere to stay for a couple of weeks to get them out of the caravan in their garden, or they're just, they're in between house sales and they're looking to stay somewhere for a couple of weeks to get the brain working and thinking about these different designs. Chances are they're going to want to bring their friends, their family, loved ones, etc. into the space to also enjoy it and appreciate it with them. So when they do so, what we need to think about is who's coming and how are these finishes going to impact their experience. Now, some of them are going to be more suited to a design style or taste preference than others. And it's like Marmite. You're never going to please everyone with these things. Somebody might love it, another person might hate it. But what I would encourage you to do is try and think about what it is that people are seeking from your property in the first place, so that you can correlate that and put it into words with the right context that might hit them exactly where they need it to, which ultimately leads to more bookings for your short-term rental property. And so just to conclude, the last things that we want to talk about is how much more money you can rent your property out for when it's been thoughtfully designed and you've created more of a curated space. So when you're using decorative finishes, I'll give you some numbers to work with here. Most feature walls as a standalone piece is probably going to cost you anywhere between £2,000 to £3,500 plus that. If you're doing a whole room, you might be talking a few additional thousand on top of that, depending on the finish that you go for. Your average micro cement bathroom is going to be in the realm of around £6,000 to £7,000 plus that. And if you're going for the painted ceilings, you might be talking £1,000 or a couple of £1,000 for a decorative ceiling. So when you start adding these numbers up to the overall design, build and installation of the rest of the project, yes, it can add a little bit onto the overall budget, but also how much higher are you able to price your property when the photos look amazing, the visual appeal is literally 10x what everyone else is doing. Well, of course, you're going to be able to price it at a more premium price point. People expect to pay more for nice things, and they can expect to pay more for good quality. And they'd also be very sceptical if it was priced too low. So these are all important factors to remember, because when it comes to renting your property out, I'm sure you want to rent it as much as you can at the highest rates. Now, with the inclusion of decorative finishes and a more curated space, we might be talking an additional 20, 30, maybe even 40% on that nightly rental rates that other people might have for a more generic or boring property. They'll quite happily pay you the additional money because the space looks and feels amazing. But not only that, as mentioned, it will also appeal to some of their wider needs. So when you're planning your next refurb or your next design project, I'd highly encourage you to think about some of these decorative finishes. And of course, if you need any expert guidance, you've got any questions or you wanted to reach out to us and have a chat, then please do so.